healing depends on our practice at home. It really does. We go to the doctor, go to the acupuncturist, there's only so much they can do, which is a remarkable amount that clinicians can do. But health maintenance through a lifetime happens at home. That's the foundation. Any good clinician, Western or otherwise Asian medicine practitioner, will agree with that the foundation of health is at home with our diet, our sleep, our handling of stress, our joys, our love, our hobbies and practices, the way we live.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. Our world is replete with influencers, but we have very few bards. There's no end to the people who can craft a snappy, candy-coated clickbait headline that hijacks your attention, but those with a soulful capacity for inviting you into the darker, fecund lacuna of your being, those with a capacity to use language that is just beyond your understanding and at the same time serves as an invocation, them folk are rare. Bards are strange characters, part poet, part outlaw, part seer. They have some kind of a muck relationship with the muse. They don't try so much as channel. They might be prophets, not in the glorious biblical sense, but in the work of muddy-footed angels with a channel into the uncorruptible light. They don't seek to draw your attention to themselves. They illuminate something in you that you achingly don't want to look at, and do. They use words in a way that unweave the constraints that you argue for. They are slippery of labels. You can't quite pin them down. It's not that they are crafty in their storytelling, but more that they're connected with something ancient, obvious, and forgotten. I suspect they don't set off to be healers, but their stories and language dispels the zeitgeist in a restorative way. You know you're in a bit of trouble when you listen to them and they unravel the spell that you'd like to continue to believe in. Soothsayers, oracles, and fortune tellers, if they are genuine, they all share a similar capacity for helping to dispel delusion and misunderstanding. They have a way not so much of shining a light on troubles, so much as describing the light that's already there. Bards have a way of tuning you into the story you're not telling. The one that's living in shadow and hope, the one you dare not tell for fear of being rendered outcast or insane. They're dark angels. They come not from malice, but from a truth you're not sure you're capable of living up to. The voices of angels are terrifying to humans. We simply don't have the ability to take in the full range of their song with our limited senses, so we tremble with fear in their presence. Bards, they have a way to step down that song into something tolerable to mortals. It's not that they crack open another world, but more allow it to seep into ours in a way that's bearable. Listening to wisdom, it's one of those conundrums that often enough, it's simple. But our preferences, desires, and yes, even hopes can get in the way. It's common knowledge that we, air quotes here, know from a feeling in the gut. Somewhere in the apparatus of digestion is an intelligence that goes beyond thinking. What we feed our gut, not unlike the thoughts we feed our mind, it makes a difference. You could say nourishment is medicine, but I suspect it's even more. In this conversation with Andrew Sterman, we discuss that more part. Andrew is by nature an artist and musician. His lyrical views on food, medicine, and healing, much like a slowly simmered stew, are nuanced and delicious. Food, it's more than therapy. It's more than macro and micronutrients. It's the essence of your postnatal chi. food and all that's connected to it, it is in significant measure how and who you become. This is a tasty conversation, and even if you're already keen on food as medicine, I think you'll find it even more enjoyable. Let's dig into it. Qiological is delighted to have sponsors who bring you terrific services, products, and classes. Listen to this. Naging your thing? Ed Neal and the Apricot Grove invite you to go deeper with nature-based medicine at the end of this month. The school season is about to begin. Stock up with formulas to keep kids healthy from Blue Poppy. Do you like working with palpatory diagnosis and have a taste for how the classics describe acupuncture? Slade Burris has a foundations class in neoclassical acupuncture coming up in September. Later in the show, you'll hear how Jane's AI scribe frees you from writing clinic notes and why golden flower Chinese herbs is old-fashioned enough not to use an automated answering service. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Are you ready to recreate your practice through an in-depth study of the original writings of Chinese medicine? It all begins August 24th. Join the Apricot Grove and Dr. Edward Neal on a transformative journey into the classical roots of Chinese medicine. If you are new to the classics, their Wisdom of the Cosmos class offers a wonderful introduction to the original writings of Naging, nature-based medicine. Do you thirst for a deeper immersion? Their highly esteemed 2-year program only runs every few years. This training in Naging, nature-based medicine, and classical text archaeology provides a comprehensive pathway to transform your practice and develop confidence through improved clinical results. The window for this unique opportunity closes later this month. Visit nagingstudies.com to learn more and commit to a practice grounded in the Naging text. With school right around the corner, now is the perfect time to stock up on Blue Poppy's pediatric formulas. Made with a gentle glycerin base, Blue Poppy's pediatric formulas are designed to support children throughout the school year. From Cold Quell Jr. and Jade Windscreen to remedies for teething, tummy aches, and indigestion, they taste great and work effectively. This month only, enjoy 15% off all pediatric formulas. And the best part? Blue Poppy offers free shipping on all orders over $50 with no restrictions within the continental United States. Visit bluepoppy.com today and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and updates.
Hi, I'm Kylie Roger, and I practice neoclassical acupuncture, a palpatory style which gives you instant feedback. This style has made me more present, more precise, and it's elevated my clinical results, and I'm not alone in this. Here's what other practitioners have to say.
The neoclassical skills that I learned have really streamlined the way that I make my diagnoses, which result in a faster treatment. The patients like it, they like the results, and I'd recommend it for anyone that wants to add another skill set to their toolbox.
Practicing neoclassical acupuncture has been a life-changing experience for myself and my practice. I've seen remarkable results in my patients and gained greater confidence as a practitioner. I highly recommend.
Neoclassical acupuncture has completely changed my practice, and I love the amazing and lasting results that I see with the medicine.
Start your journey with neoclassical acupuncture with the Foundations course this September. Visit neoacupunctura.com and transform your practice.
Andrew Sterman, welcome to Qiological.
Thank you, Michael. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So you have a book on food.
Yes, it's
which we're going to talk a little bit about later.
2 volumes, short, but
2 volume, not just one.
Volume might not be the right word. They're easy. They're written for everyone. These are not scholarly texts. These are things to actually use.
Yes. From what bit I've seen of them, it's not just about food therapy, although you could say it is. It's more like the celebratory aspect and the appreciative aspect of food and how it can be therapeutic.
Yeah. The subtitle of the book is something like I'm remembering. It's diet as medicine for home cooks and other healers. The idea is, thank you. See, you were the audience. You were the guy.
Home cooked and other healers. That's, oh my God.
One of the main ideas of writing this is that healing depends on our practice at home. It really does. We go to the doctor, go to the acupuncturist. There's only so much they can do, which is a remarkable amount that clinicians can do. But health maintenance through a lifetime happens at home. That's the foundation. And here I go, about to get canceled yet again. Any good clinician, Western or otherwise, Asian medicine practitioner, will agree with that the foundation of health is at home with our diet, our sleep, our handling of stress, our joys, our love, our hobbies and practices, the way we live. And when things go awry, then the history of clinical medicine is unbelievable. It's one of the things I love most in the world. But it is treatment, and day-to-day maintenance is at home, where Chinese medicine is very, very clear about it. Western medicine is reluctant to admit it, but Sun Sima would say, he said very clearly, I can't quote the scroll in verse, but the way I learned it, the way it was taught to me, was very, very specific. The first thing you do if someone comes into your clinic is adjust their diet. We could say even before that, and this is especially true in the Tibetan tradition, but also in the Chinese medicine tradition, the first thing to do is to work with your emotions. How did I get off? And which is a huge topic, perhaps the most important of all. But in terms of what a clinician can do, diet first, send them home, and only if that doesn't work do we apply herbs and acupuncture. And that's not coming from me, that's coming from Sun Simiao.
Yeah, it sounds like something that would come from Sun Simiao.
Yeah, exactly.
We, however, are living in the 21st century, and I think in part because of the wild effectiveness at times of Western medicine and the kind of tacit agreement of Western medicine, which is we can resolve your problem without too much participation on your part.
Exactly.
Look, in some ways it's really magical, and it can do amazing things. It can also take people a long circle route where they never quite get to where they're going.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you got to make some changes to get there. But it's trickier in our day and age, right? I'm an acupuncturist. People come to me for acupuncture. I'm using my little air quotes here.
I saw them.
Maybe I get to talk to them about their food. But here's one of the things that I've found, and maybe you can help me with this. Most people don't really want to make changes. On occasion, I have people asking about changes. But mostly, they're like, this thing is bugging me. Can you make it not bug me?
And ask me to change as little as possible or perhaps nothing.
Exactly.
Which is, of course, magic. So I think of it like this sometimes. You start working with a new client, patient client, and they begin with that. What can you do for me? What can you do for me? I change nothing. And then you begin to offer some things about diet, maybe sleep, and maybe alcohol, and maybe stress eating. Maybe just cut back. A little bit less alcohol, a little bit less coffee. Let's see if that helps a little bit. Maybe, depending on what it is, of course, Chinese medicine dietary therapy is deep, profound, and specific. So it's as specific as herbalism and acupuncture. The main difference being that we're eating all along, where we wouldn't take herbs every single day of our life and acupuncture every single day of our life, 3 times a day, 2-3 times a day. Snacking, a little acupuncture snack in the middle. We wouldn't do that kind of a thing.
No.
But we are doing that with food. Other than that, it is as specific, and it takes just about as long to learn. Classically said to be about 10 years. I find it to be more than that, personally. But in any case, so they come in and they say, what can you do with me doing virtually nothing, which is the Western model? There's a pill for this, and so forth. Keep going. And then even the Western clinician might say, maybe less fat in your diet or something along those lines.
There's a standard repertoire that they'll say, don't do this, don't do that.
Exactly, right.
Some of it I don't think is even that accurate these days, but they say it because that's the food pyramid or the whatever they learned 20 years ago.
It's, you know what, Michael, it's safe advice. It's a safe place to stand, even though you're absolutely right. We have moved on. Science itself has moved on, which to science's credit, it sometimes feels slow to us who are working with energy medicine, but it does correct itself laboriously at times. But okay, so then the next thing that happens is that someone will say, okay, tell me some things about diet. What can I do? And then they'll say, no, there's no way I'm going to eat that. Whether it's maybe add some seaweed to your diet because it's alkalizing, it clears heat, it is working with, it can be quite good for kidneys and liver connection and so forth and things like this. And people say, no, there's no way. I absolutely hate seaweed. Well, that was a lot of energy on that. Okay, good, we'll move on. There's always workarounds, but eventually people will begin to say, okay, I'm on a diet here. They sometimes call it your diet, and they're speaking to me, and I never let that stand. I always say, no, you're on your dietary plan. And they say, I was cooking an Andrew meal. I said, no, you're cooking a you meal. And we work on that for a while. At first, it's like an Andrew meal. Then they say, I love this, and they take it on. And they're cooking from the books that I provided, but hopefully they're improvising from the principles that I describe in those books, and you can learn elsewhere as well, hopefully from any acupuncturist or herbalist, the same principles. And we're improvising from there. And then they say, I'm going on a trip. I'm going to Paris. Do I have to stay on the plan? And I say, well, you asked, so here's some things we can do. Why don't you take some herbs with you, something like Bao He Wan, which preserve harmony pill. Just a fantastic formula from Shudanshi that will help after a meal if you've overeaten, if you've had, which I don't recommend, too much fat, too much rich protein, too much carbs, too much wine, anything like this. It's a reasonably superb shotgun formula. And so, okay, take something like that, or the Po Chai pills, or some other version of that. They're all coming from Shudanshi's original formula, and which I think is a brilliant formula. It's a teaching formula. In which ways do we get sick? Which ways do we overeat, overindulge? And then they'll come back and they'll say, that was very good. Now, do I have to go back to my plan? I said, well, if you want to be well. So they'll go back to the plan, and then they'll text, or the next time I see them in a session, they'll say, it's my birthday coming up. Can I have cake? And it goes like that for a while. And then I hear something quite different. Eventually they'll say, this could be after a month. It could be after 5 years. But eventually they'll say, it's my birthday, and of all days, why would I want to eat food that doesn't work for me on my anniversary of my birth? This is a day when we celebrate, and then they know some language, my Jing essence. And this is a day when I celebrate my life. So perhaps a couple days later, I might have cake or pizza or wine or whatever people's indulgence preference might be. But on my birthday, this is where I'm celebrating my life. And that diet that I used to have doesn't celebrate my life. So it's a progression. People develop, they evolve like this. At first, I don't want to change anything. Then, can I cheat on my birthday? Then my birthday's the last day I would cheat.
Why would I cheat on my birthday?
And I love that, to watch that. And so it's become very familiar.
I'm struck, too, by the progression that you were just talking about. Well, Andrew, I'm doing your diet. Actually, you're doing your diet. This is something that I see in so many places in the clinic, where at first people are doing this for an external reason, or, I'm making a deal with the universe. I'm going to do X so I can get Y.
And I'll reassess in a couple of weeks to see if it works.
Right. The quid pro quo.
Exactly. Quid pro quo. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe just as an experiment to see, look, a lot of times when people are talking about, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I don't know. Why don't you just do an experiment? I mean, do you like science? And most people are kind of like, yeah, science is cool. It's like, great. Be your own white mouse. I'm not saying give up ice cream, but what if you didn't eat it for a few weeks?
Exactly.
Just to see what happens.
Personally, I call this negotiating, where the person doesn't want to do what they're there sitting with you, paying the session fee for your advice, for your expertise and experience, and then they fight. So then I say we negotiate. And I used to say,
Is this like the stages of grief? Like first is anger and then negotiation and then...
I think so. I think it is. That's quite interesting. In some ways it is. And I remember my own path when I finally... So someone...
Yeah, how did you find your way into this? By trade, you're a musician. As far as I know, you might be some other things.
My working life is about half in music and half in Chinese medicine. And at this point, at the current moment, it's where it's been like that for many years now. At the current time, it's far more Chinese medicine practice.
Uh-huh.
And I'm still playing music professionally, touring. A week and a half ago, I was doing a major concert in Geneva, Switzerland, in a beautiful old hall, ornate and gorgeous. And I absolutely love doing this, but I pare down what I'm selecting to perform, what I'm playing, only to exactly what I want to play. And all other offers are thanked and regretfully, I'm not available. And so at the current time, yes, I'm still active at what I hope is a high level and traveling around performing, recording and so forth. But, I don't know. I don't want to give it a number, but a great deal more of my work day is in Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll tell you the truth. To me, there's little or no difference. It's just a difference of medium. As if we're saying there's diet to work with, there's herbs to work with, there's qigong to work with, and there's music to work with. And I remember vividly, as a very young child, being drawn to music. I made a decision that it would be my career when I was very young.
Huh? Musical family or drawn in some other way?
No, not music-loving family like many people, but no training in the family, no careers in the family. To me, music was medicinal from the very first.
Oh, my goodness.
From the very first. And I actually remember, how old are you in second grade? I can't remember, like 8 or something. I don't know. But in second grade, I was told that my hands were too small to learn playing music. Okay. But nonetheless, I think I was pestering my parents or something. And they found a teacher who granted me 15 minutes. Okay. A 15-minute lesson.
Oh, this is it. This is your audition in front of God for like the rest of your life.
I didn't think of it that way because it was a piano teacher whose kids were watching Saturday morning cartoon television in the same room, and it was noisy. And but the person I was energetically with was the teacher, the dad, and I was energetically not with the kids at all. And so I had a 15-minute lesson, went back home, and I took a little piece of paper and wrote, "Today I began," and put my date on it with my little second grade handwriting, and I never thought about it again. And when my parents moved out of their house, my mother put it in an envelope. She had found it.
Oh, my goodness.
And mailed it to me with no note.
It was the note.
It was the note. And I
remember. It was the note.
I had a memory of it. I still do have a clear memory of it. The thing is that music was always medicinal from the very, very beginning. And it remains so. And it remains so today. By medicine, I don't mean that if the fever's at 101, you play this song. If the fever's at 102, you're going to need a sonata. 104, you're going to need a concerto. Obviously, it's not like that. In fact, I have seen in Chinese medicine, I have seen music that people have written for gallbladder dampness, and then you buy the next CD, and that might be for liver invading spleen. And I don't resonate with this at all. It doesn't. I don't believe it works like that. But
when you say medicine, we're talking about a capital M medicine here,
right?
So, and this is maybe kind of a big question.
I can almost smell where you're going.
What is? You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, what is medicine? I mean, we talk about it all the time.
We do.
We're in the medical trade.
Right.
We're just talking earlier how the tacit agreement of Western medicine is we're going to help you with something, ideally without too much participation on your part. In fact, you might be totally unconscious for what we're about to do, and you'll want to be, and that's a gift from God, because
in fact,
sometimes that's exactly perfect.
Yes, sometimes I agree. The paradigm goes even a little further, that that if it doesn't work statistically, significantly statistically, without you knowing anything about it, then it's not a real medicine. A real medicine is defined as something that works when you're asleep, if you don't know you took it, if you could be part of a double blind and so forth. And if we say, at the same time, adjust your diet, at the same time, try to take a little more time, try to sleep a little bit better while you're taking this medication, less coffee, less alcohol. Sometimes they will say less alcohol if it's contraindicated per se.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the study, none of those things, all those things actually will discredit the study. And we're past this now, but I want to get back to your question. I do believe that we're at a place where the paradigm needs to shift to be inclusive, and we see it all around us. We are in a paradigm crisis at the current time. But what is medicine? I tell you, I have two thoughts on this. Let's see what we think. Let's try this. I'll give you the second one first and the first one second, because it needs to work in that order and for some strange reason. Medicine heals the fractures of our life. We are wounded. We are suffering. Some of it is physical, some of it is emotional, some of it is spiritual. Physical, of course, can go into the tens of thousands of specific diagnoses that are available to us today.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we would say at the level of the body. So we have, I think of it as being fractured. This is not for me, but hypothetically, my hip hurts every step I'm aware of it. Hypothetically. You know that I'm speaking hypothetically when I talk about PMS or something like that. Although I do think that a lot of men have an equivalent. If we just open our eyes, let's take a look. I think I see a lot of it. But in any case, the lack of a cyclic, periodic release and rhythm to our days. I think, but in any case, let's not get bogged down. We live in a very difficult world. It historically may have always been so through the history of civilization, granted. But a lot of things are tough. We have all the illnesses that people talk about, from the Shan Han Lung through the latest report in today's paper. So medicine heals what's fractured. That's the first part. And how it can do that would include music. It would include poetry, painting, novels. It includes walks in the woods, in the parks. It includes looking to the eyes of someone over dinner, whether you like them or think you might like them and so forth. Or you remember what it was first like. Like I remember my first meal, our first date with Anne, or I used plural, our first date together was lunch in Paris. We were actually on a blind date. And in Paris, we had flown there and met, and then we went to have lunch. That was the plan. And I remember, I can recall the feeling, and I can recall the feeling when perhaps we have dinner later tonight. Of course, it's very, very different, more than 25 years later, but it's still living. That's the point. And so it doesn't have to be a new date, although it's easier to talk about that way. And so we think about all the parts of us that are fractured, all the different levels of life, including physical health, physical wellness. And medicine is anything and everything that helps heal that sense of being fractured and the reality of being fractured. Now, that's the second part, healing what's broken. And sure, we can have good days. I don't mean to be depressing. We can say, I'm having a great day. The weather here in the Northeast happens to be spectacular. It's just the beginning of spring. It's really magnificent out, warm in the sun, still cool in the air, a cloud to be seen. The animals are scurrying from the woods coming out of quiet for the first time this week. So we can stand out there and say there's nothing wrong. Right? But still, there might be some health conditions manifest or hidden that we could talk about, and with validity. So the first part is the medicine heals, or mends is a better word, mends what is broken.
Oh, okay. That's a really interesting distinction.
Yeah, because eventually, of course, even with the best medicine and the best meditation, qigong practice, herbs, acupuncture in the world, so maybe we'll be a superstar and live to 115.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software built to help you focus on what matters most, your patients. Building rapport with your patients during appointments is important, and that can be challenging when you're also trying to collect timely and detailed documentation. That's why Jane built AI Scribe, to help you document important information without the manual note-taking. This feature transforms your session recordings into chart entries. All you have to do is review your notes, sign the chart, and you're done. And since security is a top priority at Jane, AI Scribe was built securely in-house to be fully HIPAA and PIPEDIA compliant. With a tool you can trust, Jane helps you spend more time on patient care. Learn more about how Jane can help change how you feel about documentation. Head to meet.jane.app/documentation to book a demo or sign up. And if you're ready to go, be sure to use the code CHEOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. But this mending piece, it rhymes with, I don't know the name of it in Japanese, where like a precious cup is broken.
Yes, yeah.
And they'll put it back together with a golden glue or, something that shows you the natural history of this thing that has been broken, and you see the mending because the mending is part of the integrity.
Right. It makes it so special. I know exactly what you're speaking of. And there are stones like that as well. In Taoist stone medicine, stones which crack and over eons fill in with agate or some other stone that washes in and it fills up. A septarian would be one of these stones that the tradition, the stone medicine tradition that goes back to the beginning of time really, but is recorded in Nanbansao, where 1/3 of that classic of Chinese medicine is stone medicine. 1/3 is food, and the third is herbs.
Now, wait a minute. Which classic is this?
The Shen Nanbansao.
I'm not... Oh, Shen Nung Bansao. Yeah.
Shen Nung. Yeah, the Shen Nung, the divine husbandman's herbal or materia medica.
Yes.
It's the oldest materia medica that we still use, really. And it's incredible, brilliant book full of secret codes and things like that. I mean, not negative codes, but secret protocols to use, or so to speak.
It's there for those who can see it.
It's there. And in any case, 1/3 of that book is stone medicine. So we would use a stone that cracked, like the pottery, precious pottery that cracks and is prepared with gold that you were mentioning. And we can find things where nature has done this, self-healing. In fact, this is something that interests me a great deal. Frankincense and myrrh and olibanum. These are the trees, these beautiful herbs that were famous all through the world, brought to China from Middle Eastern traders, by the way, of course, Islamic, Christian, and Jewish, into Xi'an, where they were assessed as, and they're the attempt of the tree to enact self-healing. These are beautiful spiritual and healing herbs, and they're used for, as the Chinese masters, historical masters assessing them, listening also to the way the traders share them. It was like with hands out and a sense of reverence. This is one of the most valuable things we have. And of course, the medical masters would take a look at that and note the reverence and assess them. And they say, these are useful for healing wounds that will not heal. And wounds of the heart, wounds of the body. So sores that won't close, that won't respond to other treatment. We can use them that way today. So the only thing is, don't put them in your diffuser. They'll gunk up and ruin never put those kinds of things. They're far too sticky. So the resins and so forth. But also incense wood, sandalwood, aqualaria wood, where the tree is sometimes scored or the bark is damaged and then put back, peeled and put back. The tree then goes into emergency gear of healing itself. And that's the wood that's the most powerful and the most prized. I'm fascinated by this.
Because it's the healing response.
We're sharing in its natural healing response, which is the essence of herbalism in many ways, especially emotional herbalism, which really, really interests me.
So you just said something here. Natural healing response. This is... Man, I started studying acupuncture almost 30 years ago because I've been getting it as a patient. And I had this question that would not go away, which is, how the hell does this stuff work? Like, what is going on here?
Exactly.
And I'm here 30 years later, right? I've still got the same damn question. And people ask all the time after having a treatment, like, what happened?
Right.
And
that's a good patient, by the way.
It's always such an interesting question that what happened, and I can say to them, well, these needles help to bring out a healing response. But Andrew, I got to tell you, that is the most unsatisfactory answer
Right.
I could give anybody. It's unsatisfactory for them. Actually, for many people, it is satisfactory. And I think the reason is because they believe maybe it's going to work, or they have only a rudimentary understanding. They trust nature. And so when I say, oh, it naturally brings out a healing response, they're like, yeah, I'm on board with that. But me as a practitioner, anytime I say that, it's like I'm slapping my hand.
Yeah, I understand. The thing is, we're entering the realm of mystery. And
Yes, we are.
a sentence of fact will not enter into that dimension. So I remember, just to echo what you're saying here, I remember my early experience with Chinese medicine, with acupuncture, and my entry to Chinese medicine was primarily through Qigong, originally, many decades ago. And I remember thinking, if this works, then things are very much different than I thought. And I still think that holds. I have not found anything at all, not a single scrap of anything to say, no, my early paradigm was spot on. Everything, all the evidence, in fact, including Western stuff, again and again, once you look through the lens, our lenses are open, our eyes are opened as we begin to cultivate ourselves. Everything points to it's an energy game, and the material world is working inside that energy game.
I want to know more about this, and here's why. I think in part because I'm kind of a brick. Seriously.
That's a great thing to think.
I'm sorry?
It's a great thing to think. It puts you in a very good place of learning from everything. It's the humble brick. I get that.
I mean, I'm just kind of dense, and I used to think I was kind of smart, but practicing medicine for a while shows me that I'm not nearly as smart as I thought I was. So there's that. When I hear energy, and I'm not discounting this, but I'm curious because, like, my mind can just go in a million directions with that. What makes it even more tricky is when you're talking with somebody else, saying, well, it's an energy medicine, it's an energy thing.
Right.
It is so fabulously undefined. We might as well be speaking Swahili and Mandarin.
Well, I think it's worse than that because
it's like, where's the common ground that we can...
It's an overused word.
Stand on to... I mean, maybe you've got... I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but I'm just going to finish this thought.
No.
I suspect you've got a better place to stand with this because you're a musician. And you're used to being in these moments of emergence with other people in moments of emergence. And so there's a kind of sensitivity that you get.
Well, maybe not. I remember, this leads us back. Remember, we were talking about mending what's broken or what's fractured.
Yes.
And I'm trying to concentrate and pick up the loose ends here. And I did mention that was the second most important thing. And
that's right. Okay.
So what you're bringing up is the first most important thing, which is that at the fundamental level, at the level everything really exists on, and if we're not ready to admit that everything exists in this level, then we can say it sits on this level, which is not exactly right, but it's a stage in the path. Everything is actually perfect, and there's no tears and wounds anyhow. And so that viewpoint, which is hard to describe, again, it's hard to describe in linear language, that everything is perfect as it is.
Which is like the Buddha nature.
Exactly right.
Thing they talk about. Like it's everything is just as it is, and that means it's perfect. Doesn't mean you're not suffering.
It doesn't mean that we don't clean up if we spill some oat milk. Okay, I can't say spilled milk.
Right.
I can. We sometimes have milk, but that leads to a level of subtlety. That's the next thing of like, does that mean we fix nothing? We do nothing in the world? It doesn't mean that. It means that we understand that the fabric itself is fine. Within that, certain things go on, and it feels to us because we've been separated from it. In the West, we have the mythology of the Garden of Eden and the expulsion in an original sin and so forth. In world practices, we have the idea that we're somehow not in touch. We've lost touch with the sense of perfection. What in Tibetan practice, by the way, is to use some of the vocabulary because it's so precisely good. The absolute realm needs no repair. However, the relative realm has a lot of stuff oozing here in all directions. And we're doing good work to work with it. The purpose, because no one does live forever, the purpose of the whole medicine is completion. And many, many people find completion at the moment of their death, at the moment through the dying process. Wouldn't it be nice to move that forward a couple of years and have a good couple clear years? And if we could do better, to really work this forward and become really sort of reconciled with how everything is. And then we work on our health, but it's not fetishized. We just work on it. But if we have this idea, if we were to think about it, I think this is something that Buddha did teach about. If it's going to come together eventually for us, why not sooner? What's in our way? And then Chinese medicine steps in brilliantly. Welcome to my world. This is the way I put the pieces together, by the way. That the ultimate is ever present. End of story. There's really, someone has a cancer and here's the love, right? But on the other hand, what if we could ease the suffering, right? So Chinese medicine then is, in my experience, the most incredible, insightful, effective set of practices, a huge set of varied practices to work with the experience of the individual to help it clarify. So we can say, let's say, for example, I'm a person prone to anger, irritation, agitation, irritability, and this is my life. I wake up in the morning, who am I going to get mad at? And could someone teach me some curse words in Czech? I've gone through all the other languages, right? And this kind of a thing. And this is the experience of life. And of course, as we know, as we're seeing this quite a bit now in today's world, a person who's an angry person will see all kinds of things to get legitimately angered at. They will find these and they will say, this is a fact. Look at this. And if you don't agree with them, they'll be quite angry with you.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
So this is the nature of that. It's everywhere now. So Chinese medicine has so much to offer that some of this comes from the body. As my master teacher, I studied with many, many, many teachers, including my own partner wife, is a super significant teacher for me. But my grandmaster teacher would be Jeffrey Yuan, and I studied with for over 20 years, carefully and assiduously, right? And there's one day he just tossed off a thing, because the teachings are the teachings, but the little asides, the toss-offs are absolute gold. And
yes, oh my goodness.
We know, everyone involved in Chinese medicine knows this. It's one of the great pleasures of it. And
it really is.
It is.
I mean, it truly is. It's these little one-offs that it kind of stops your world for a moment and you go, oh, it might be like that.
Or instantly it is like that. Yeah.
And then like a bunch of dominoes fall and everything's weird and different.
Exactly. But the weird is beautiful. In any case, I agree with you completely. The one I'm thinking of is when one day he said, you'd be surprised how much of your experience of your mood is actually somatic.
Is actually somatic.
So the anger, of course, we're trained very well to take a look at the liver, gallbladder, how's it going? Take a look at the blood, how's it going? Take a look at some of the other factors and do an assessment. Of course, how are they working together as well? So it's not just he's angry, that's liver. We have to get past that to be much more subtle. But you look at how this is playing, and that's a place we can begin to look. And almost invariably, we find some really interesting information to work with. And dietarily, that means, what are we eating that is helping the liver stay tight, that is constraining the liver, that is overheating the blood and the liver? What are we doing with diet that's blocking the free flow of our body functions?
Or our habits, or our mental diet?
Well, there's all those things as well. So, but I was just trying to bring in some diet stuff because that's kind of where I live. And so we'd be finding fried food, and we'd be finding, of course, alcohol and sugar and chocolate. And so things like this, coffee, things that people take as an entitlement. I may want to change my diet, but we can't talk about those things, right? Garlic, spicy pepper, all the spicy chilies and so forth. I was having lunch with someone not too long ago, just an acquaintance, and we were at a restaurant in Manhattan, and she reached in her purse, there's a couple other people, there's 4 of us. She reached in her purse and took out hot sauce. And I said to her, the restaurant probably has 1 or 2 or 5 bottles of hot sauce you can choose from. And she said, yes, I might use those as well, but I like to always have, I can't go without. And so it was not a clinical encounter. I didn't say anything about, how's your anger? How's your bitterness? How's your blood pressure? What's happening with...
Was she a sarcastic person?
I would say there's a lot of layers going on, in particular bitterness, actually. But it just struck me, we can't go one lunch without the hot sauce? And then I'm thinking, because I'm irreverent, I didn't say this, but it would have been fun to do so. If I gave you $5, would you have a mild lunch? That's not enough? How's 20? Here's 100. What would it take? And at some point, people would crack and they say, okay, for $100 maybe. I don't know. But we see this all the time. This is a kind of obsession. It's a kind of habit, as you say. Mm-hmm. And we become habituated not only to the taste, but to the emotions that taste elicits or supports in the body. So it's pretty hard if you're eating a diet like that. A lot of garlic, hot chili, alcohol, sometimes twice a day. People have wine with lunch and later in the day, which is surprisingly common. In America, probably not so much twice a day, but in Europe, very, very often twice a day. We're looking at all those things. And then you're asking people to sit on their cushion or to lay on the table for a 40-minute or an hour acupuncture session. And they say, I can't sit on the cushion. It drives me nuts. I'm going to jump out of my skin.
Yes, well, the cushion is different than a table. I mean, you've got the influence of needles, which is usually pretty strong inducement to settle a bit. But sitting on a cushion to quiet your mind, you're just asking for trouble. You're asking for it.
You're asking for an honest take on how you're doing.
Yes.
Which is that I can't sit on this cushion.
It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. But the diet is so important here. And that there really isn't a single aspect of our life where diet isn't either hurting or helping. It's not neutral. So it doesn't mean we all have to have a monk's diet. And I don't personally, I eat a lot of monk's food. I love that kind of food. But it doesn't mean that. It means that we want to eat a diet that does support our aspirations. And one of which could be to be pain-free. We don't want our hip to hurt. And it's a complicated subject dietarily. It would get into aspects of heat and clearing heat. It would get into aspects of what acupuncturists, you all call divergent treatments and so forth. It can be, it's absolutely applicable, but it's a long discussion.
Yes.
So that's like a teaching discussion per se. But there isn't a single, this is what I'll say about it. There is not a single aspect of health, mental, emotional, or physical, where diet is neither supporting or hurting or sabotaging your status and your health. And there isn't a single clinical encounter, doctor's visit, acupuncture visit, that should not be, in my opinion, supported with dietary advice. And I've been trying to look for one. If you have like a toenail fungus, maybe that's not related to diet. No, of course it is. And I'm trying to think of something like you have a wisdom tooth coming up.
What I think I hear you saying is whatever people are coming in with, there's an entree to talk about how they're supporting or not supporting themselves.
Let me say it the way I think it. Okay, Michael. So, and then of course people can disagree. I'm not in the business of telling anyone what to think about anything. Sometimes I don't even tell myself what to think. But this is the way I think it. Every treatment, acupuncture, herbal, from a therapist, from a Western doctor, from a dentist, from your hairdresser, should be accompanied with dietary advice to help support the strategy, the specific strategies of the treatment. In other words, you get an acupuncture treatment for, let's say, I don't know, liver wind or something like this. And we should say, and here, take 5 minutes, and this is the things to avoid. These are the things to include dietarily. And that should be, in my humble, for every treatment.
How do you get people interested? Because I'm thinking about diet. It's something, look, some people get really wound up about it.
Yes.
Right? I have to do this. I can't do that.
Oh,
I can eat these. I can't eat that.
Then I get them to loosen up.
There's that piece of it. Yeah.
So we call that orthorexia. I can't eat anything unless it is perfect. And often it can be extremely low fat, zero salt, very, very low animal, or completely vegan. It's usually things like that, which are more on the ascetic side. And when you see a patient who's underweight, who might be emotionally frail, right, which is a lot of people these days, but by that I mean that something's going on and they're thrown for a long time. And I'm not talking about a death in the family or something sudden and from the human realm extreme, but I'm saying that they watched the news, or one of their friends had a crossword with them and later apologized, but they can't get over these things. So I'm calling that emotionally frail, with no judgment, not good or bad.
It's an observation.
It's, in other words, you're on the lake, you're in a sailboat, and it's one of those sort of flat sailboats that doesn't sink into the water very far, and any little bit of wind blows you just about over. We don't have much ballast, much anchor.
Those are really fun sailboats.
They really, really are.
Those are great sailboats.
But not when the water is super cold, because you're going to be in. But they are super fun. I agree with you. And so in any case, when people come in and they are showing signs of orthorexia and they're underweight and emotionally frail, then absolutely I encourage them to eat more. And spend a lot of time explaining that they're trying to be so good that they're actually in deficiency. We talk about building in deficiency and how it needs to be a balance. I'll tell you a musical story about all this.
Okay.
Which is part of the tradition. I wasn't there 2,500 years ago. This is one of my favorite stories because it is about the practice and it is about music. So Buddha was doing his thing, and he was 7 years in the forest, or 5 years with the 7 ascetics. And he was just before he became Buddha, before he cracked through to full realization. He had this strong inkling that there's something more, and he could almost touch it and taste it. And he sat down on, the famous story, he sat down by the bank of this river, leaned against a huge tree, and the descendants of that tree is still there. And he said, I'm going to sit here and crack this open, or I'm just going to sit here and die. And
all in.
All in. That's a great phrase for it. And I sometimes tell my music students there, that kind of thing, that once in a while you have to say to yourself, this is it, play or die, right here on this stage. I'm not going back a failure. It's going to be carcass or success. And we shouldn't do that too often, but there are times. And so that's it, all in.
There are times.
And so Buddha, of course, was one of the most famous ones of these, had the all-in experience, one of the most famous ones in the history of humanity. And then he did crack through. It's a famous story, of course, and every bit of it's interesting. And then when the morning star came up and he had done it, and he knew he had done it, he passed out. And then somebody, this buffalo girl woke him up and, can I help you, monk? And it's a very interesting story because she was low caste. She was female. He was upper caste, highest caste, and a monk. And they weren't supposed to talk and touch. And she nudged him to see if he was dead. Monk, are you alive? Are you dead? And he responded, and he broke all the rules right from the beginning, all the rules of gender, of class structure, and so forth. He was completely free. And she was part of this, which I also love that part of the story. And he's just sitting there for a month, and she brings him food once a day. What does she bring him? White rice cooked in buffalo milk. Buffalo milk is easier to digest than cow's milk. This would be water buffalo. That was what she was herding. She had two huge buffaloes in her care. She didn't own them. She was an indentured employee, kind of. And so she brought the cheapest food, but it's basically like rice pudding, right? You add a little bit of honey and a little cinnamon, and we've got rice pudding. And so Buddha's eating this stuff, and maybe there wasn't honey, certainly there wasn't in his, but rice cooked in milk, because this is food for recovery, for convalescence.
Yeah, it sounds like kanji.
It's kanji in milk and water buffalo milk, which is a little bit closer to human milk, by the way, easier to digest than modern cow's milk. And in any case, he had one bowl a day for his convalescence, and he was regaining his strength. And then while he was sitting there, now the point of the story, a barge comes by, and it's floating by this flat boat, and it was a party boat. Someone was preparing for a wedding or some kind of banquet, and there were people. It wasn't banquet time. There were people cooking food, and it's a big vessel. It was going very slowly by the river instead of television. You had what was going on in the river. And in one part of the boat, there were 3 musicians sitting on a rug on the flat boat, and they were tuning their instruments. And this would have been long before the sitar was invented. This is quite a long time ago. And the instrument would be a precursor. So imagine a precursor to the sitar. And the sitar, in its own way, is the precursor to the modern guitar, the tar being the word for string. So there they are, and they have a precursor to the sitar, and they're tuning it. And he's listening, Buddha's listening and observing with a fully awakened mind. And he says to himself, and then later he taught this story, which is why we know it, he said, just like that, not too tight, not too loose. And we don't need any more advice. So we go from orthorexia, which is a type of anorexia, it's a type of eating disorder, to gluttony, which is most of us. It was me a couple of days ago, over the weekend, and then I went to Chinatown, and it was a beautiful thing. And so we go from an overeating culture to eating disorders. But where is the not too tight, not too loose?
Not too tight, not too loose. And that's constantly changing.
As is tuning, musical tuning, constantly changing.
Sure.
So the fabric of life itself is flawless, but we do need to tune a little bit. And when we see something that can be tuned, we tune.
Golden Flower Chinese Herbs is celebrating 35 years of existence. Wow, what a journey it's been. It started because the baby boom generation was frustrated with conventional medicine. In the 1970s, there was a resurgence of interest in what was considered natural healing modalities. After President Nixon's visit to China, acupuncture started to emerge from the Chinese communities into greater awareness. It was a magical moment. 2025 is the 50th anniversary of the legal practice of acupuncture in the state of California. Oh my, the awareness and access to acupuncture has grown incredibly. So much has changed since back then. But some hasn't. Like many companies, Golden Flower Chinese Herbs does a lot of business through their excellent website. But they still have real humans who answer the phones. You won't get lost in a voicemail messaging maze when you call. Like our medicine, Golden Flower Chinese Herbs is a bit old-fashioned. Visit them at gfcherbs.com or pick up the phone and give them a call. You know, I appreciate your thinking about an instrument, tuning an instrument. We often use this term in our clinics. People come in for a tune-up. I know in my mind for a long time, not at this point, but for a long time, and in many of my patients' minds, tuning up like you tune up a car. We're going to adjust the carburetor, and there's that.
And then it'll rev faster.
But here's another thing. Fine instruments need tuning all the time.
Right.
Because they're a fine instrument. And they're, in Chinese, it'd say linghua, right? They're lively.
Right. They're
which means they're sensitive, and so you have to constantly attend to that tuning.
Well, and that's what we are. And we live in a culture where there's so many numbing aspects to modern living. Okay.
So I've got a question for you, because there are so many aspects. And at least where I live in St. Louis, Missouri, talking to people about diet, it's not in my regular repertoire.
Right.
I get how it could be, and I appreciate the conversation. But what I do notice, and this is part of that splenic function of digestion, which is our thoughts, our emotions, our experience. I find that I've got many more opportunities to have something to say about that stuff.
That's interesting. But it goes together. Poor digestion, we're going to have a hard time learning, retaining advice. We're going to have a hard time. We'll be very slow to process things if there's any digestive thing. Look, I was having this discussion earlier with Anne, and that a mistake we make in our community, our Chinese medicine community, is to think that there's such a thing called Chinese medicine. Or we have our version, TCM version, or we like to flatter ourselves and say we're doing classical Chinese medicine, or we're doing whatever we're doing. And even if you say, I'm a Shan Han Lung...
I'm doing the medicine of 2,000 years ago. I'm connected.
Right. And there have always been so many medicines being practiced in China. And the further back you go, the more variety there was. There was family and town by town. And county by county, regional, north and south eventually. And we're richer for this. I was thinking about during the Tibetan diaspora, when all these people fled Tibet, including some of my personal teachers. I'm bicultural Tibetan and Chinese influence, and with no problem. The masters are the masters, and I like to study with all of them. But one of the things that the Tibetan government in exile did is they tried to, if there were three monks from a certain monastery that had a unique practice, they would find them financial support. Go do your practice, set up a place, notate it, recopy your texts, do whatever you can to preserve this, because otherwise we're gone. And so that's such an important thing. So when we find a strange, by strange I mean some special, unique branch of Chinese medicine, it should be preserved. There's several of them. Actually, there's probably countless that are in danger right now. So, because it's not that popular. Or Western medicine, like emergency medicine, for example, used to be a big part of Chinese medicine. But now, of course, we all go to the ER. We would send people to the ER. You might be in legal jeopardy if you don't. So
exactly.
So
yes.
So the emergency medicine aspect of Chinese medicine, it's not lost, and it's not in danger of being lost. But you could see how it could become extinct. Another branch.
My understanding from some of the historians that I've spoken to, Republican-era doctors in China, those guys could treat some infectious disease. Not all of them, but some of them. And man, could they treat it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But that stuff, while Chinese medicine can do it, how many of us know how to do that?
That's really interesting. And I think when we take a look at what's happening in our culture medically and scientifically, we may need some of those things to come back for life and death purposes. And I know that sounds dramatic, but if we think about the illnesses, the germ-based illnesses that are now immune to the antibiotics that have been overused, and we find these resistant microbes, we're back to 100 years ago. And so that was short, right? The effectiveness of antibiotics. We are seeing, if you look at it from a medical theory and practice perspective, the list of antibiotic-resistant germs is growing, not shrinking. And if you look at it, what's dangerous in our world, there's so many things, but on a short list of 10, you would have to put pharmaceutical resistant microbes on that list.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, we have pushed their evolution in profound ways.
Yeah, and how could it be otherwise? It's high school biology that's going to happen. So, and we have been doing that, and we're still doing it with antibiotics in the food supply and so forth. So, which is a huge player in this. And so we might be back to this. We need to preserve this for the benefit of humanity. And we need to be open-minded about it, and we need to not fight between the branches of medicine that are available in the world today. So I believe that very strongly. It just seems like a no-brainer.
I think that part is tricky. And I think it's tricky because as humans, by and large, for the most part, we're kind of territorial.
Right.
We're tribal.
Very.
And it's kind of our nature. It might just be part of our nature. I don't know if we get away from it. I don't know if we can get away from, talking about, well, those guys over there who talk that certain way, or they drive a certain way. Well, they're from the southern part of the city, so.
It's true. It's really true.
They're those kind of folk. I think we're tremendously tribal. Honestly, Andrew, I don't think we get away from it.
I agree with you. It is a struggle for each person's evolution to do that. And we could say,
yes,
on some level, that self-cultivation, which is a key term in Chinese medicine, in Qigong, meditation, Tai Chi, and so forth, this idea of self-cultivation is the cultivation, or we could just call it evolution, is the evolution from tribal to transcending the tribal mindset. And we can map the chakras in that fashion and so forth. I find that to be very, very useful. But the thing is that one of the things I like about Western doctors is that they can be very practical. Something's working, go. So, and I like that the public dialogue is not there, but the doctors, for the most part, they are there. I mean, there's with some exceptions, of course. So if something's working, like some of the dietary patients I see, some of the people working, I don't say working with cancer. We don't use that word in Chinese medicine, but I'd say they're working through a Western diagnosis that they present to me of cancer. And I don't say that they're cancer patients. I say they're working it through. And some of these people that I've been working with,
It's a very powerful place to stand.
it's an incredible, yeah, absolutely, I agree. And they start doing really, really well, and maybe they're getting superb acupuncture, maybe they're really making a change in their diet with that idea of being all in, to quote you. I love that phrase. And the idea of, if not now, when? When are we going to make that change in our diet?
If not now, when? Yeah, that's...
The Buddhists would say, I'm quoting something from some 2,000 years ago, but Western source, but the Buddhists would say, don't worry about it. We'll get it next lifetime. But most people don't want to think like that. And which is
And why waste an opportunity?
exactly, that's,
Why waste an opportunity?
you've put your finger on the point. This is it now. Let's go.
Okay.
And when people say that, and they do well, and they go, just let me finish the thought because I know we can move forward. And they go to their hospital oncologist and they say you're stable, you're doing well. We're maybe doing really well. And the person then looks at their doctor and says, can I tell you what I'm doing? And they sit back and say, okay. And I'm not having dairy. Well, there's no study that says that helps. I'm not having tomatoes. I'm not having sugar. So, oh, that's been discredited, but I'm not doing it. And then the doctors look at them and they say, don't tell me anymore. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You're one of the exceptions. Don't rock the boat. Just keep going. And of course, we know that in Chinese medicine, in the dietary branch, which is the same as all the others, that there is a strategy here. There is a theory that's being implemented. There is actual thinking. It's real medical thinking. But we don't need to convince anyone. So let people...
Which is the opposite of conventional Western medicine. I'm not saying research isn't a good idea. Research can be really useful. It's one of the avenues of knowing about things.
It is one of the avenues.
It's one of the avenues, and it's a useful avenue, but it's not the only avenue.
It can't be, because the research, they sort of round the corners with statistics, and any individual sitting in front of you or next to you in your office could be an exception, according to statistics. And so all we need to do...
Especially if you're doing things that are unusual, it's more likely to make you the exception.
Yes, exactly. Especially if they turned up at someone's office and went to the effort to seek your counsel, to get your treatments. And we would even say that it's not the needles, it's not the herbs, it's the effect they elicit within your body.
Yes.
And of course, it should be done syncretically. In other words, it shouldn't be, let's not have you be an experiment, only this, only that. Let's use all of the tools. And if one of them turns out not to be the one that helped, what's the harm? If it turned out that sitting on your meditation cushion didn't actually help, which is hard to imagine, by the way, but if that's not the one, what harm did it do? And if it turns out that we asked you to avoid 12 foods and one of those you didn't need to avoid, what harm does that do? So what I'm looking for are people who, as they present to us that they're seriously ill, that they're profoundly ill, what I'm looking for, first of all, is to understand that they're perfect underneath, that we don't see them as broken. We're just looking to clean up some stuff in the relative realm.
Yeah, that's so broken. I don't know if I can even help. I think it's very hard not to fall into that. Oh, they're broken. How do you stay away from that?
That's the patient's job, to say, I'm broken, I'm suffering, I'm crashing, I can't see a way out. That's their job. It's incredibly important that we don't do their job. Their job is to be in their bodies, to be in their lives.
That's kind of funny.
And look at it this way. Let's just try one out. I'm going to improvise something.
Sure.
A person's in a bad marriage. God forbid. I hope not. I've heard that it happens. So your patient's in a bad marriage, you can see that it's a mess from the first time they said, oh, and my husband, and you just get a vibe. I'm not doing the tone of voice properly, but you get a vibe that, you know. And then one day they come in, they say, my wife left me, or they sued for divorce and it took me by surprise, and they're crashing. Meanwhile, if we had the vision of the gods, which I'm not saying we do, but if we could see that they're going to have 2 more relationships, then they're going to find the person they were destined for all along, Or maybe we don't believe in that kind of romanticism, but let's say they'll find a person with whom they can co-mutually thrive.
Well, and sometimes you got to grow yourself into that person who can co-mutually thrive.
Exactly. I know that was bad syntax when I said it, but in any case, you're absolutely right, of course. And that's what, while they're coming with their sore shoulders, while they're coming with their wind cold invasions, while they're coming with their digestive disorders, we're also always looking for their personal evolution.
Mm.
And when are they going to get to the place where they're going to eat a beautiful meal that their diet on their birthday, and happily so, not as a Spartanism or something like that, but say, this is exactly what I deeply want. Like my daughter said to me one day,
that transformation.
when she's a young adult now, but when she was a kid, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, she said, "Dad, I'm going to be a billionaire." And I said, "Okay, very good." And she said, "When I'm a billionaire, I want to buy you something." I said, "Okay." And so I said to her, "There's really nothing. I'm good. I'm good." And she says, "Don't say that. I'm going to definitely buy." I said, "I'll tell you what. How about you take me out to dinner?" And she said, "Definitely. And then what would you like?" And she's thinking I'm going to say, "I want lunch in Rome, dinner in Paris, and we're going to go on your private plane and all that." I said, "No, I would like tofu with black mushrooms, cooked really beautifully, and some bok choy or something." And she got furious. She said, "Dad, I could buy that for you now." And so we want to get to the place where that's what you want on your birthday. Your version of that. That's what I wanted if someone was a billionaire. And it's true. That is actually what I want. Of course, I'll have caviar another day, and that'll be fine as well. So it's not about Spartanism. It really, truly isn't. Not too tight, not too loose. So the thing is, when someone comes in and they're crashing, getting back to that crucially important point that you made, it is our single job not to join them.
Andrew, I love it. After asking the question and then hearing you reply by saying, "Oh, that's their job."
Yeah.
I think it's really true. And people will often apologize in my clinic for the difficult moments that they're having. People cry all the time.
Awesome.
I get accused of being a psychotherapist all the time.
I like that. That's perfect.
I'm not, and I have no interest, but I want to know about people.
But you're releasing the tension, and you're a safe human being.
It's loosened and it's safe. But here's the other thing, and this is because I practice Chinese medicine, that I get to have this view, that I get to inhabit this perspective. Look, I was never interested in practicing medicine as a kid. I wanted nothing to do with it. I don't like sick people. I don't like being around sick people. The thought of being a doctor was the last thing I wanted, right? I wound around to this because I'm like, acupuncture, how the hell does that work?
Exactly.
Here's one of the things I learned in Chinese medicine school, and it's made such a difference. This is not a Western medicine concept. We do not have an idea in Western medicine of the zheng qi, of the upright qi. We don't have it, but we got it in Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
No matter how sick somebody is.
The core concept.
No matter how much of a hot mess they claim they are, in fact, might be, we can't ignore that the zheng is also there. I think it makes a huge difference. I know it helps me as a practitioner to kind of keep my wits about me when my patient is coming undone.
I think that's a beautiful way to work with it. I just think about their intrinsic perfection, and which is more, even though I'm far from monastic, I would be flunked out of any monastery, but it is nonetheless, it's more of a monastic view or a meditator's view, which is where I, in a sense, am coming from. The sicker someone is, the more clearly we hold that view. You are just fine. Let's work on this problem. And, the problems you're experiencing. And again, we go to this idea, and it's not to sound morbid, quite the opposite. It's about releasing life in a good way while we're alive. But if you go to the dying process and you say, we will not come through this, right? At whatever age, you're 100 years old and things are failing, organs are failing, the yin and the yang are separating, and we're having the cold below and the hot above and so forth. And we're noting this. We're watching the elements disintegrate, literally, and figuratively. And at that point, what's our therapy? And the therapy, of course, is to look into someone's being and say, this is all fine. And often, they're the ones who say this to everyone around them. They're calming people. I mean, we've all seen this more than a few times, where the person in the dying process is the one anchoring everyone else. Not all the times at all. There's many times when people die bitterly, unfortunately. But the role of the caretaker at that point, especially in Chinese medicine, which is in many, many ways Taoist medicine, it is a spiritual medicine, is to be a midwife of the passing process. Now, if we work with that, and the way that's done is any of many versions of the same thing. You make a big bubble of love around a person, and you reassure them that this is a natural process, and they will know it. And everything is concluded. If there's loose ends, we'll tie them up. Uncle Larry's needs a phone call or something, whatever. And usually it's done in the mind, and it doesn't need to be an actual phone call. And I'm sure anyone who's attended passing will have stories about this. Uncle Larry came through the wall, and Uncle Larry's been gone himself for 40 years. And you hear these stories again and again. And it's just the West just says it's hallucinating, but it's useful hallucinating, okay? As the consciousness is doing what the consciousness needs to do.
There are those who say we hallucinate through our entire life. So there's that.
Exactly. There's that. And so that's the point, is if we could take that sense, what does a person need in the dying process? They need to feel love. They need to feel everything is good and fine. They need to be considered as beings. And that's what people are seeking. What if we did...
And here's the other thing. What's their job?
What's their job?
Their job is to die. At that moment, their job is to die. I'm taking this back for a moment in my own mind, thinking about the patient who's falling apart, to what you just said a moment ago. It's the patient's job to fall apart, not the practitioner's job. It's the patient's job to fall apart.
Exactly. We have to hold the anchor.
Yes.
But the thing is, I want to make one more connection, which is like, what if we brought this bubble of love, bubble of consideration, the idea of everything being complete, what if we brought this forward by many decades? We said, today, as we consider the people that we're having dinner with tonight, we just, sure, I mean, if they step on our foot, we might say, excuse me, that hurt my foot. We can still be a human being, but we encircle ourselves, which is in a sense one way of thinking about meditation, and we can encircle others, which is a way of thinking about relationship or being in the world, in a circle of love, in a circle of consideration at the highest level, in a sense that whatever's wrong, so be it. We don't have to fight, like the way we're not going to fight the dying process when we're 120 and say, oh, you're dying of whatever. If we had boosted that organ when we had a chance. This, like, wait a minute. It's all it doesn't matter anymore. And so, yes, it's true. It doesn't matter. A person has acid reflux. Doesn't matter. Once we admit that, we see them as whole. Now let's treat the acid reflux. How hard is it? It's actually very easy to treat all that stuff once we get the emotional stuff a little bit cleared up, once we get the lifestyle habits cleared up. So like, for example, I was working with...
Okay, give me your example, and then I've got a question.
Okay, we have to hold our threads. I had a phone call from someone the other day who's newly pregnant in their first trimester, having absolutely terrible morning sickness, vomiting multiple times a day, difficulty, and they're worried about the baby because they're not being nourished, they're losing weight. And I was trying to reassure her that as crazy as it is, nature gets through this, babies do fine, and now let's treat it and so forth. And so I'm making food recommendations. By the way, the number one food recommendation for nausea, including morning sickness, including, there can be different causations of nausea, of course, inner ear problems and so forth, motion sickness. But the number one food remedy that I use would be pureed carrot ginger soup. It's very easy to digest because it's pureed soup. It provides hydration because if we've been vomiting, you can be nauseous without vomiting, but if you have been, we're losing fluids. The carrots, of course, have an energetic of dissension. The law of signature, the way they grow, they are even more descending if you crunch them, but a person at this point wouldn't be strong enough to do so. Ginger has a it warms the belly and it calms nausea. You can also place ginger on the skin, on acupoints, whatever point you like to use to treat nausea. You can place a slice of ginger, wet, fresh ginger, always fresh in this case. But in any case, you make a nice soup, very simple, water, not chicken stock, because chicken is a little bit boosts yang qi.
A little bit hot.
A little bit hot.
A little bit warm.
And we're really trying to do this. This is very simple, easy to make, easy to eat. Now, so this was received happily by this woman, and we explained that after we have some improvement, we'll move to richer foods that have more protein and more oil, and so forth. And so, okay, and she was very smart, and she understood that immediately. We're going to work with digestion, then we'll work on nutrition. Digestion first. This is a strong point of Chinese medicine dietetics. Digestion is more important than the food you're eating, and then we work with the food you're eating. But of course, we can do both at once to a certain extent. The intention is layered. And then she said, I have about 4 or 5 hours, sometimes 3 hours per day when I'm not nauseous. I can eat anything. And I said, great. This is hormonal tides and so forth. So during that time, have the carrot and ginger soup. Have some white rice. And she says, no, I can eat anything then. I can eat pizza. I can have fried chicken. And I was trying to explain, this is the difficulty here, that when we're working with diet, we're eating today for how we'll be feeling tomorrow, the next day, and the day after. It's about 3 days.
Oh, we're eating today for how we'll be feeling tomorrow.
And the next day and the next. About 3 days. So in other words...
And the next day and the next day. That's powerful. That's a really nice invitation.
It is. And of course, then the next day, we're looking at the following 3 days. So if you have something, for example, you're giving a public talk, or you're getting married, or you do what I do, where you're walking on the stage of Carnegie Hall to do something important, and you don't want to say what you want about musicians and so forth. I've been lucky to make a good living the whole time, but very lucky. But I'll tell you one thing. You walk on the stage at Carnegie Hall and you don't bring your B game. You just don't. And so that means you want to practice, of course. And
you've got to take care of the instrument.
You have to think 3 days, if not longer, before. And I'll tell you, there's no one who does something big. Like you listen to Itzhak Perlman, the magnificent grandmaster of the violin, talking about his Carnegie debut. It's a beautiful interview he once did. And he said for 2 weeks he was minding his diet beforehand. For 2 weeks, every day, no nonsense, according to his dietary plan. And that's what you do. So when I was hearing this from a woman who's newly pregnant, of course her intention for her family is perfect. It's very strong. She'd put a knife through you instead of saying that she was trying to hurt her baby. But we have to teach this very gently, very warmly, that when you have 3 hours when you can eat anything, don't eat in a way that's going to make you sick tomorrow. And that would be for overwhelming the gallbladder and liver with fats, with pizza, with fried chicken, with things like that. That's when you have your coffee or whatever.
Attend to the digestion. And later you can attend to the nutrition.
Yeah.
Good luck with nutrition if you don't have digestion.
Exactly. That's one of the golden nuggets of the entirety of Chinese medicine. It's more important, as Jeffrey Owen said to me many, many times in my dietary training, which lasted 20 odd years, and it's still going, even though I'm not sitting in front of him every week as I did multiple times a week. As he said so many times, one would rather have excellent digestion eating junk food than bad digestion eating the best, most healthy food in the world. And then, of course, we can do some version of both. So Western nutrition doesn't understand this quite well enough, in my humble opinion. It's just about...
Well, it's very, it's so focused on macronutrient and micronutrient and so much of this and so much of that. It'll give you a recipe for...
powders.
The different kinds of thing you should have in it.
Yes, yeah.
But it doesn't really talk about the experience of eating something lovely with someone you care about that gives you all those things.
Or someone lovely that you care about could be yourself.
We can include that.
So here, sometimes I think about this, and this might be something that your listeners are always is on their radar. What about these diets that are relatively extreme diets, no carbs, only protein and fat and so forth? And so from a Chinese medicine perspective, of course, that's a big discussion, but it can be useful for short term, which would be anywhere from a few days to a few months, in my opinion. I won't speak for Chinese medicine, just my opinion. But the question we would have from our medicine then is, what foods are we eating that nourish specifically or support or have, and the technical term would be have an affinity for the organs of digestion, stomach, spleen, pancreas? Because those foods, the foods that have an affinity for stomach, spleen, pancreas, for earth element organs and functions are grains, tubers, squashes, pumpkins.
Comfort food.
Well, it is comfort food as long as your comfort food is clean and healthy. Today, this is one of the big problems we have, is that people's comfort food is drive-through fast food. And this is an enormous problem. And this is where how do you deal with it? We deal with it by educating. Every session is...
I think I'm talking about old-fashioned comfort food.
Of course you are. Old-fashioned comfort food.
Look, I got a bunch of gray hair where I have it. Actually, it's not even gray. It's white these days. So when I think of comfort food, there's the stuff you like, and there's the fast food drive-in, but I think of soups, I think of potato, tubers.
Yeah.
Like just the right kind of home fried, just a little crispy, but not too much.
I know, but we and
a warming soup.
So it's music to my ears.
It's love.
It is, but we have people I used to say grandmothers, now I have to say great-grandmothers, and we have people who, when things were tense in the family, when they felt sick, when they were upset, someone would say, let's go do McDonald's, let's do Kentucky Fried Chicken and so forth. And this became...
Oh man, that was not the house I grew up in.
I gathered that. I got that already. But it is a big reality, and especially in the food deserts in our cities and towns and highways and so forth. And we are spiraling into a food crisis that we can pretend isn't as big as it is, but it is huge. And we can't just say, this is one of my, this is something I need to say. And I'm increasingly teaching and sharing and conversing in the following way. When I first started my training, before Chinese medicine, and I was trained in macrobiotic cooking in theory, I was trained in holistic cooking in theory, going back, to be honest, into the 1980s. And we would talk about holistic food, and with Chinese medicine training, we're talking about foods that of course, the Li Dongyuan was talking about, and the master of the earth school, and writing in the 13th century, and what it would be like to go up until 1960 to a physician. Why would the classics of Chinese medicine be writing about glyphosate? It's not in the Neijing. But when someone comes in our modern culture, it's not just the people that come for care, it's all of us. We are subject to an onslaught of toxicity that has never been seen before.
Mm-hmm. No, it is a modern phenomenon.
So what's going on here? Look, in a couple of weeks, I'm giving a talk to parents at a school of special education in New York City. This is all kids with severe ADHD, with on the spectrum in different ways. And this is a noble school. The teachers are amazing. The administration is amazing. And talk about Zhongqi, these are people who are doing what the Buddhists call right livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
They are strong and they are good. They're very well trained. And the parents have requested a dietary thing, and it's coming up. And so there's a couple things going on here. One is that some of these families, I won't speak for all of them, I won't speak for any of them, but some of these families are very stressed. They're really hanging on by a thread, and they don't want to hear someone say that they're feeding their kids the wrong food. Okay, that's an absolute given, and I respect that. And then there's many other factors. So the approach here, and I recommend that everyone has their version of some kind of approach, something kind of like this. Have your own version of it. It used to be we would talk about foods that would be good for spleen, pancreas, foods that are good for liver, gallbladder, foods that are really nice for the kidneys, things that are good to digest. And then we were talking about microbiome. that this is a modern thing that came up really in the 1990s and up to 2010 was the focus. I hope it's still the focus. The focus on the microbiome took a huge hit during the COVID lockdowns, by the way, where we reverted the public conversation back to germs, which was the obsession when we were young. And it's not wrong. These things are not wrong. It's just about what is the main focus. And so the microbiome was a big focus, and that is very, very important. And we can talk about things like yogurt and miso soup and having enough fiber in the diet, and these things are very, very important. But we can't actually start there anymore. The first point of discussion has to be junk food, ultra-processed food. You read study after study, meta-study, which collects 150 studies and so forth. They are clear, unequivocal. Ultra-processed food, which is up to 70% of the average American kid's diet in terms of calories, and 60% of, and I'm not a statistic guy, just on the top of my head, about 60% of the adults' main caloric intake is from ultra-processed food. Some people would be more because in my family it's less, your family it's less, so presumably someone else is more. Foods that have been profoundly altered in industry, in food factory contexts. In other words, you're having a pizza. It doesn't have to be ultra-processed food if you made it from scratch. If you went to Naples and someone's like starting out with grain or flour that they buy and it's good quality, but pizzerias are buying pizza dough that's already been made. It's full of preservatives. It's full of glyphosate, of course. It's got extra gluten added to be stretchy and all kinds of things going on so that it's ready for the restaurant to begin short cooking. So that's how things are done to a frightening extent, even in pretty good restaurants. So we have to start with ultra-processed food and junk food, which are not exactly the same thing, but they're largely overlapping, and say there's so much problem coming from this. And what are the effects? I wouldn't call them side effects. What are the effects of these? Again and again, the studies agree. And this is not controversial. This is New York Times, BBC, Guardian. It's just mainstream that the effects of ultra-processed food are primarily on mood. Yes, obesity. Yes, because it disrupts metabolic, not too tight, not too loose. Our instinct at that is being subverted. It has been subverted. And so, but ADD, ADHD, anxiety, depression, even suicidal ideation, this is
all the drugs that teenagers are on.
And
it's not insignificant.
So we have to look, and this is now the first thing, and we don't need to talk about it for a long time. If you don't want your family to be suffering from, or at least suffering as strongly, as severely from issues of ADHD and so forth, anxiety, depression, obsession, OCD, things like this, we must consider getting off ultra-processed food and fast food. So what I'm doing now is I'm not even teaching fancy stuff. I'm just teaching what's the simplest meal you can make. The simplest meal you can make.
Andrew, that sounds like a fabulous place to start.
Thank you. I'm glad to get the support on it because our Chinese medicine is so precise. It is so elegant. And I feel an absolute love for it. It is one of my life's great passions. It'll never stop. But what we need to teach is don't open something from a crinkly bag. If you want popcorn, buy organic corn, pop the corn. Buy butter, put it on it. And that's not health food, right? So the effects of popcorn can be quite negative. It's highly constipating, number one. So if someone comes into the clinic and they say, you say, how can I help you? You say, well, and this is a true story. A woman came in and said, my boyfriend says I'm constipated, and I didn't even know, but we moved in together, and he said, what's with you? You don't go to the toilet. And she said, yes, I do. And he says, how often? And she says, once a week. And I didn't even know. So this is her personal status quo. And so the first question I ask is about popcorn, and I would say about half the people say, I eat popcorn every day. Then the other half we treat other ways, right? So then we do what you said, where we begin to negotiate. We say, let's go for a month without popcorn. You can do it. How much do you love yourself? Who do you love more?
Let's just see what happens.
See what happens. Make that commitment to me.
See what happens.
In fact, you can write to me once a week. I went another week without popcorn. Look, we're not talking about heroin. We're talking about corn, okay? But it is a habit for people, and It's a comfort food, and it's something to eat without consciousness while you're watching movies and so forth. I get it. So we want this. Take a look. Try a month, and we do other things, of course. And then it's not, and the people where that's not implicated. In any case, you get the idea. We work first with this idea: don't open something from a crinkly bag. Don't unwrap dinner and just heat it up in the microwave. Cook the simplest possible thing. And because I love teaching cooking, and as a cooking teacher, one of the things I observe again and again, and these are my students, we love each other. I love my students, colleagues, friends, acquaintances. I love these people. And I'll teach something, and then they'll send me a photograph, and I love the photographs. Sometimes they're gorgeous, but very, very often they're way overwrought. So here's a simple dish. It's congee with an egg, a poached egg on top, some sliced ginger, some sliced scallion, a splash of toasted sesame oil, a splash of good quality soy sauce. Nice, okay? And then what comes in is a photograph where the congee has been cooked with chicken stock. Okay, maybe good, maybe not good. Depends on your health. Again, as you say, it's slightly hot. Agreed. And if you have inflammation, if they have acne, if you've got insomnia, I wouldn't use that. I would use water. Just cook with good, beautiful water. That's what we're looking for. That's what the body wants. Okay, good. And then there's a poached egg. And by the way, I had some leftover this and some special this, and I teased out a carrot with my knife skills. And you look at this thing, and it's like a museum thing, but it's a little bit of a kitchen sink cooking.
Yes.
And we are trained. So this is the problem we have as home cooks, that we put in too many things.
Here's the other piece. All these food influencers, all this stuff on Instagram, there's this, there's that. Everything's gorgeous. You got your famous chefs and, oh, look at me do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
To go back to simple.
Simple is the holy grail.
It's a challenge all by itself.
It's the hardest. And I'm lucky enough to travel to Italy now and again. And I love to go to Italy and all the different regions. And actually, Sicily is my favorite food, just so I can get that out of the way. And absolutely gorgeous food. And you have some dish in front of you that is so simple. You think, I could do this. And then you go home and you can't. We just can't. We're adding this, we're adding that. And granted, the ingredients may not be as good. Yes.
There's that. But this attitude, and I get it. Because, look, I'm an American, so, more is gooder.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. So we need to train out of that.
But to be able to step back
and
go, just this.
You're putting your finger on something else that would be great to crystallize. That we live in a wealthy country. We live in a food abundance. Yes, there are people around us who are struggling to get enough food, but they're not struggling because there's...
But that's not most of us.
That's not the people who are asking for our assistance here. And I do love to donate within my means. So I am keenly aware of food shortages. As I live in New York, we all live together. One building's wealthy, one building's middle, and one building's poor. All or low income is proper. All, and then there's people with no home at all. And so I get it. I'm keenly aware of this. But let's speak where we're speaking. We're talking about people who are coming for advice and so forth. We have an overabundance of food, but we still have this odd American feeling that it's hard to get enough. And in diet, this...
Is that an American thing, or is that a human thing? Is that living through famines and knowing that, look, we have a fairly good abundance of food. I've got a really magical box in my kitchen that keeps it cold. It's magic.
Yeah.
It's magic.
It is.
There's food in the box. Food in a box. And there's actual real food in the box. It's wonderful.
Maybe so,
But like as human beings, aren't we a little bit like geared toward we might not be eaten for a while depending on circumstances?
Yeah. Did you see that?
Biology and evolution?
Many people in your listening group probably have. Have you seen that? It's a set of photographs of a month's worth of food around the world. It's brilliant.
Oh, I have not seen that.
Oh, you have to look it up. I'm not sure. I can't remember if it's a week. I think it's a month worth of food. And their families were asked. Of course, some families are bigger than other families. And a photographer in their own home photographed the kitchen and a month's of food. And It is astonishing. And some of it's lean and beautiful. So everyone has enough. But the enough looks very, very, very different. Of course, there's the idea of ultra-processed food and packaged food that is overwhelming the North American, or at least the American. But if you look in Mexico, when I do travel, and I travel quite a bit, it's one thing where my food and my musical careers nourish each other, because
It's nice to have that synergy, isn't it?
it really is. I'm talking to chefs all over the place. A week and a half ago, I was in Geneva, as I mentioned, and I had a beautiful, memorable lunch in a Somalian restaurant with these refugee immigrants in Switzerland. Everyone's got their restaurants. It's a world collection of restaurants in Geneva, and had this beautiful, beautiful food. And I was talking with the owner, who's the main cook, and she was explaining how she cooks the lentil soup. It's a little different. She knows how they do it in India. She's a cook. She knows how we do it like this and so forth. And the feeling is not the urgent, I must eat more because who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. It's not there. And these are people who know a great deal more about food urgency than most Americans do. The Somalis, of course, as one example, has been through terrible things.
That's really interesting. I'm wondering if times of lack build a certain fortitude.
Yeah, I think it's food.
And if you haven't had some lack, then you don't have that resiliency.
I think it's food tradition. It's food tradition. A friend of mine who's a chef told me the story that he was invited to France as the personal chef of his employer, and his employer had cousins in France, and so, but born and raised in America, in the U.S. And he went with her, and they have family land in beautiful part, the coast of Normandy. Okay, so all the French people, they gathered from Paris and from the south, and they went to their property in Normandy, and the American side of the family went over, and there were several cooks. And his job, my friend, his job was to cook lunch one day, dinner the next day, and alternate like that for a group of about 12 people. And he told me that the French community of this family were screaming at him, very angry. To say upset would not characterize the way it was told to me. He said they were angry with him, very critical. Your portions are crazy big. It's 2 lamb chops, not 3, not 4. And they were very upset. This is food culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've all experienced that. You have pasta in America and you have pasta in Italy. Wow, this portion is very tidy in Italy.
Very different.
It's very, very different.
Yes.
Which leaves you room for other parts of your nourishment. Maybe a piece of fish, maybe something like that, which would be the standard, or some beans or some other food, and which fills out the nourishment, so you're not just having a pasta dinner and going into a coma. So I believe this to be food culture. I mean, what you're bringing up is a question for discussion, and no doubt there's truth on all the different angles. But I think this is what we teach at home. It's what we teach, as you say, in the restaurants, in the food influencers, and America is, bigger is better, and it's become a point of how restaurants show, because the food is not the biggest expense of a restaurant, especially when it comes to something like pasta and potatoes and bread and so forth. And
right, that stuff's pretty.
The portions are
But what's the thing that people often talk about? Well, the portions were too small.
I guess.
Why do people go to places like, what is it?
All you can eat places. Yeah.
I forget the name of it. There's a number of restaurants in town. They're famous for their large portions.
I know.
So anyway.
I do understand that, but this is an American thing. That is not an Italian thing. It's not a French thing. It's not, you don't see that in Spain. As a matter of fact, at one time, this is an embarrassing story. I was playing a series of concerts in Madrid, and the musician presenter there took us to a famous tapas bar. He says, "This is the great place. This is really unbelievable." And he says, "Have as much as you want." And we met the people, we're running it. And it got late, and I thought we're just having dinner. My friends and I, the Americans, we ate a dinner. And the owner of the place came over and said, I don't want to be impolite, but you guys overate. And so the bill is bigger than we promised. It's like, what are you talking about? She says, well, it's not like that. And so immediately I was like, oh, that is so interesting. And we meet teachers along the way. So that owns a tapas bar was one of my food teachers. It was very interesting. And I took the lesson. I do think it's an American thing, and it's not serving us well.
Well,
especially when we combine it with poor quality food.
yeah.
And we'll add that actually they interact with each other, overeating and poor quality food, because we don't feel satisfied.
This might get to the crux
Yeah.
of a very important matter, and probably to pick up on another conversation, because we probably need to land this plane.
Okay. So
That thing about being satisfied, that might be a place to...
let's do that. But just to wrap up where we are, the idea that ultra-processed food might be the first, I recommend, or at least consider this please, might be the first place to begin a discussion, whether you're teaching a group, like, for example, a group of concerned parents, or any parents, I hope they're concerned, a group of a patient with some of these mood disorders, eating disorders. We have to go to real food. The body's still, as perverted as we've become with our diet, with the modern influencers diet, the body still remembers and has an intrinsic memory of real food and how to digest it. So we'll begin with that. Then we go to food for digestion, what's good for digestion. Then we go to specifics of there's many, many ways to organize food in Chinese medicine dietetics. We could say that we want to support longevity, so we're thinking about maybe foods for the source qi, yuan qi, or at the kidney level. Maybe we want to think about liver things. Maybe we want to think about immunity.
I'll tell you, after this conversation today, I'm thinking a lot more about just supporting digestive function.
That's the place.
I mean, it just seems, I'm thinking about a number of patients I have and some of the troubles that they're facing, and just spending this time with you and getting reoriented in a sense to, no pun intended, the central role of the digestion.
Absolutely. And
how critical that is.
Sometimes I say to myself, it's a sort of a Chinese medicine joke. I say to myself, 5, everybody, 5, because 5 at the center of the magic square, right? And representing earth element. And I hold my hand up with 5 fingers spread like 5. Remember, it's about digestion. And this is something that Ann and I we quite often discuss. A patient comes in and the case can be so complex, or seems to be so complex.
Mm-hmm.
So many things going on. They emailed, we all get these emails, 3 pages with 5 pages of lab results and so forth of the person presenting their own case. And you might take the pulses, and the pulses are what I call chaotic, and not a technical term, but a useful term for me. I sometimes also call them ricochet pulses, just all over the place, like a pinball machine. And we think,
yeah, pinball pulse. I like that.
Where do we begin? I don't know where to begin. And sometimes people will say, maybe I'm just not a strong enough clinician for this patient. This is over my level. I say, no, don't worry about it. Don't think that. Begin with digestion. Sort out digestion. And that always means giving advice on things to avoid and things to add, things to include, things to favor. And yes, you live in St. Louis. Diet is different all over the country, all over the world, all over it's always different. But
yes, but I can tell you this. I grew up in St. Louis. I was surprised to find myself back here about 15 years ago. Not the same St. Louis I grew up in. Even a place like St. Louis, Missouri, yeah, sure, we have our fast food like everybody else does. But there's food culture here now as well. And people...
There's food everywhere, yes.
People know more than we used to know.
Yes, and it's exactly, just as you say, I agree, and I found that everywhere. And overseas as well, places that used to be really hard to eat, you can eat beautifully. It costs a little bit, but we can cut back on one Starbucks coffee or something along those lines. And
I prefer coffee at home anyway.
Exactly. So, I'm mostly a tea guy, but although I know a guy in Italy who can really pull an espresso. But in any case, the food is every place. But the thing is, we want to focus on things to avoid and things to add. We want to ask people what they like. I'm always asking people, what do you like to eat? And then they send some kind of nonsense that they think I'm going to like. I say, no, what do you really like to eat? And then we work from there.
Oh, I get this with exercise as well.
Yeah.
People are like, well, I don't really like to exercise. Like, really? Is there any kind of exercise you do like? So I hate the gym. Yeah, I do too. But do you have anything you do that you move your body and you go, I like that? And they're like, oh yeah, I'd like to do yoga or whatever. People have things they like. It's almost like there's a guilt around doing the thing you like. Well, if I like it, it must not be good for me.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's the best dang thing for you.
I know. It's
like, what in your food repertoire might you like that would also be good for you? That's
right. We put some things on the table and we begin to help guide among the things that they like. And sometimes you have to put your foot down. If someone comes in, they say, I've been told I have a cancer diagnosis. It's a different game. Now I really need your attention on this one. It's eye to eye. And compliance can make the difference. And it's not just that illness or that group of illnesses, but many, many things that are serious. Or if someone says, look, I'm in a rut. I've been at the same job. I don't feel bad, but I don't feel great. I'd like to move forward here. Or again, we have these subtle issues of why is fertility low? And so we're working then on a gradual game, but clear to make a change in health. As I like to put it, it's not that complicated. It can get complicated, but it doesn't have to be very complicated. And we can look for a place to put the lever. And if we do it skillfully, we just place the lever well, and we just sort of sink down, then the rock moves.
Yeah, you don't need to put a lot of...
Right. And
you don't need force, just a little bit of power. You put the lever in the right place. I like that. In fact, I think it's a good place to put a pin in it for the day.
Okay. It's an absolute pleasure to speak with you. We knew it would be. I look forward to the way we banter things about.
It's fun. Medicine is fun. Talking about medicine's fun. You've given me some new ideas and some avenues to think about food in a way that I haven't been thinking about it. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
There's a lot in this conversation. One thing Andrew said, it was simple, like a fortune cookie message that I want to tuck into my wallet. The phrase, not too tight, not too loose. I like that perspective because what might be too tight or too loose is constantly up for grabs depending on the situation. And as you know, that's ever changing. So I find it as one of those simple soups, if you will, that nourishes through simplicity and attention. He also said this, I had to work on the assumption that my thinking is not necessarily trustworthy because my thinking, it reflects me. And if I'm imbalanced, then I might be the last person to know, and my thinking would be the last thing to know. So we can't use our own thinking as the gold standard for clarity. I think this is an important reminder that what we think and what we believe, it's more a reflection of us than an accurate reporting of the world. In our time chatting, getting ready for this conversation before rolling tape, I remember him saying, what you think you know might be your pathology at play. I took a moment to write that down because on one hand, I thought it was funny, and on the other, perhaps true in ways that I'd rather not see. All this reminds me that the mistakes we make, there are opportunities to see a bit more clearly. As Andrew said, we learn one mistake at a time. There has to be some room to digest and compost our experience. Nourishment does not come from being perfect. It comes from finding a way to cook together all the influences of our life and somehow remain open enough to not only being engaged, but allow for contribution as well. If you enjoyed this conversation on food and nutrition, we have some other offerings for you here on Qiological. There's episode 62 with Tracy Stewart. That's on Constitution, Korean medicine, and the power of food. And in episode 326, Brenda Lee joins us to speak about the 80-20 of nutrition. There's plenty more in our back catalog. Swing by the website and have a look. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.